Hello, everyone, GitLab team members and the wider community to the monthly GitLab release kickoff call. Today, we're kicking off release 13.11, and I'm extremely excited about it. As always, we plan ambitiously, and our plans are subject to change. I want to remind you that you can all contribute and, and follow along with us on the issues and videos for everything we're going to talk about here today. I want to also share a quick reminder on Fiscal 22 product investment themes. These are in addition to our regular stage work that everyone else is doing. One is application security testing leadership. The second one is adoption through usability to make it easy to discover and use the features that we already ship with focuses areas like convention over configuration and various others. And finally, SaaS first, which does not mean SaaS only. It means focus on improving SaaS for our SaaS customers and those customers who are self-managed, but also want to have SaaS capabilities. I want to, in the spirit of that, I want to share another change we just did on our general prioritization, where we moved infra-dev issues, which is a proxy for GitLab.com in various ways, above the item number 6, which are customer promised features. This can have an impact on features that are promised to customers. So if you have any of those, please reach out to us and we can figure out what's going on there and give you more details. But it's important to note that we are prioritizing reliability, performance, and availability of GitLab.com. The order of operations today is we will start off with the enablement section, with the ops section led by Kenny, and then we'll move to the enablement section led by Josh, and we'll wrap it up with dev and sec section led by David. Take it away, Kenny.
Awesome, thanks Anup. And yeah, I am super excited for the 13.11 release. Let me share my screen. My name is Kenny Johnston. I cover the ops section. The ops section includes our stages for verify, package, release, configure, and monitor. First of all, I want to highlight something Anup just mentioned, that a number of the teams and groups within the ops section are participating in activities to make sure that we continue to provide ongoing performance, availability, and stability to our services on GitLab.com. We've seen an exponential amount of growth in the usage specifically of our CI services over the last years. And so in many cases, that means we need to make sure we are leaning in and supporting that growth to make sure that GitLab.com remains up and running. So I'm going to jump into some issues, and they're all going to fall in a primary theme of focusing on user experience. Some of them are going to seem minor, but I just love the fact that our teams are finding these key insights from users and making small iterative improvements to make their lives better. The first is we're going to remove the job artifacts message when there is no artifact. So today, when you were to look at a pipeline, it always shows you this job artifacts message. Well, that's not relevant when there are no artifacts being created in this pipeline or in this job. So we're going to remove it and have a better empty state for that messaging. The second one is another removal, and I get excited about removing parts of our feature because they make the product more usable and understandable. And that's, we were looking at this page, when you look at the list of jobs or pipelines in GitLab, there is this little button for CI lint, which will allow you to make sure that your CI configuration is working properly. We found out that users never click on that and never use it. So we're going to remove it. So we'll take that CI lint button away, reduce the cognitive load for users when looking at their jobs and pipelines. The next feature, which is really about usability, is also a highly upvoted feature or issue for removing the requirement when you're using our directed acyclic graph or needs relationship between jobs in your CI pipelines, that they have to be in separate stages. This is kind of a recognition that when you use the needs relationship, you no longer need to necessarily define stages at all. And many users have suggested that they would just like to start writing jobs and define the relationships between those jobs and not necessarily put those into stages. So by doing this, we'll be taking first steps to enable that use case, but it will also make it easier for you when creating new pipelines to not have to worry about making sure you, in some cases, the workaround is to create kind of fake stages for yourself as you go. The next one is a great, another usability improvement. So in GitLab, you can provide code quality feedback to developers directly in their merge requests. And that comes in the form of a code quality report that's an extension of the merge request view. Well, what we found from users is that what they really wanted to do is kind of inflow of reviewing code, understand any code quality degradations, or if there were code quality degradations. So we wanted to show this in the diff view, not necessarily in the central code quality report view. So in 13.11, the verify testing team will be working on adding this kind of simple link and call out while reviewing code changes in the diff view in GitLab that highlights whether or not there were code quality changes associated with that file. Another great quality of life improvement. And lastly, we're going to be continuing to iterate on our support for the DORA 4 metrics by providing median time to merge as a chart in our CI/CD and other analytics dashboards. So you can see that here. It will start measuring the median time for your merge request to get to time to deploy to production. And it includes places where you might not have had merge requests deployed, so you can get a sense of your overall trend lines for this important metric for measuring the performance of your DevOps teams. So as I said, super excited about all of our activity we're kind of primary focus on ensuring security or stability and reliability on GitLab.com. I'm looking forward to 13.11 being the best release ever. Over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Kenny. Those are some pretty amazing updates. Can't wait for those. I'll go ahead and start talking about our enablement section. And we have broken it into three main themes here: adoption through usability, new markets, and SaaS first. So let's jump into adoption through usability. We have a few key items here. The first one is on the Geo team, where we are working to improve our geo-replication functionality. We've made a lot of progress, which you'll see coming soon in SaaS first on the disaster recovery aspects. And we want to now start working on our geo-replication. And a key point here we want to have is a single unified URL, which you can access for whether it's web interface traffic or Git pushes that will do the right thing for you, even if you have 5, 6, 10, 15 geo-replicas. It will pick the right one and it will just work. And you can forget about trying to choose your local node. And so to date, we have support for that with SSH. And this is adding it for the web, which is super exciting. You can now have an accelerated web experience where your assets will be cached locally. And of course, anything hitting the database and things like that will go back to the primary, but still a great improvement and a great user improvement we're excited about. Next up, we are continuing to work on improving our search latency. And we're going to be doing that here in 13.11 by continuing to break out each content type into their own indexes. This not only improves performance, it allows us to have in the future better faceting options in the global search experience. And so you can facet based on label potentially and other content, which might not exist in other content types. And so by having the particular indexes, we get that flexibility to offer those faceting options and offer the indexing options for the content that is actually in the index. And so looking forward to that. And we're also continuing to improve our documentation here as well for both users and administrators. Next up, we are continuing to work on our support for the OpenShift and the GitLab operator. We are confident we will deliver this in 13.11. It has taken us a bit longer than we expected. However, we are very close to the end, and we are confident we'll be shipping it in this release. So we're very excited about this. It will allow users on OpenShift to deploy GitLab the server there. And it also lays the foundation for an operator-based pattern in Kubernetes for all of our customers in Kubernetes as well. So it affects and it'll improve both OpenShift and Kubernetes folks' lives in the future here. So very excited about that as well. And we can move on to SaaS first. We have a number of items here, heavy focus for us here in enablement. The first item is that we are working to support multi-node Postgres databases for geosecondaries. The goal here is to have a like-for-like architecture on both primary and secondary, so that if you have a high level of traffic in your primary and you need to fail over, you can handle that high level of traffic instantly on your secondary without having to scale up your database to meet that demand. And so you can have the same number of nodes in your primary as you do in your secondary to make sure that happens. So looking forward to this. And we're also continuing to go through and adding additional verification for snippets and blobs and other content types here in Geo, and also continue to work as well on our LFS support for the self-service framework. So we're going through and adding the last few bits and pieces of content types, as well as also verification as well. From here, we can move more into the performance aspect of the SaaS first efforts with the memory team, we are working to split the application into some functional parts to help ensure that we can load only the required dependencies for those parts. The current idea is that we'll probably split this by web API action tables and controllers, and then also Sidekick and cluster. It's kind of a larger split, but we can still save a lot of memory here, like what we did earlier with GraphQL in particular, where we only loaded those requirements for GraphQL and saved a lot of memory. And so we're looking forward to this. We're working on a blueprint right now to help establish this as a pattern and to see if we can realize these gains like we have with GraphQL across a larger part of our code base. From there, we're also working to continue to reduce our memory consumption for both Puma and Sidekick endpoints. In our last release, we introduced the ability for us to actually measure the memory consumption of individual controllers and routes. And so we now have this great data, which we know exactly how much memory each of these is consuming. And we can now go through and target some of the worst offenders to help bring those down and make sure we're not having a very large upper boundary of memory allocation across our common monolith. So really looking forward to this to help target, in particular, some of our worst offenders from a memory standpoint. From there, we are continuing to work on our database efforts as well with our efforts to address a potential primary key overflow. We have some tables that have an int4 primary key, and we are approaching, in some months out, exhausting that key. And so we are working to shift those into a big int or an 8-byte integer to make sure we have sufficient growth room for significant growth on .com to come. And so you can see some of the tables here, and we're working on the migrations and making sure we have a solid migration plan that we can tune to help migrate these tables from the old, smaller primary key to the newer, larger one. And so you can see some tables we're working on here, and we are progressing with a high focus on this for the team. Finally, we're also working to continue to improve our automated database migration testing. We have a number of migrations that run here at GitLab, and ensuring they run successfully and predictably when they get deployed to production is a key focus area for the team as well, to help make sure that when we deploy code, we're confident that it will work. And so these features here that we're working on can help support that goal. So that's it for us here at Enablement. I'd like to pass it over to David to take us through the dev efforts and secure.
Thanks, Josh. And let me get my screen shared here. So to kick it off with the dev section and focus on create first, there's a lot of items within create and within plan that are in preparation for 14.0, which is not this obvious milestone we're talking about, but the one after that. First one I want to highlight for you is the changing of the default branch name within self-managed instances. And between feedback from the community, as well as the Git maintainers, that name is going to be switching from master to main. So in 14.0, on your instances, new projects will have the name main for the default branch. This will also then roll out to our .com offering as well. But this is a big change you'll see coming here shortly. Another item related to 14.0 is we're getting rid of Gitly NFS support. And with that, we want to give you enough documentation and time to begin understanding what you need to do to begin that migration and preparation for 14.0. So this issue, if you're currently running Gitly, please check it out, read through what is planned, and then engage on the documentation. Let us know if you need any other guidance to make that change at 14.0. A nice improvement to code review is the ability to show the outdated thread in line. So today, when you're looking at comments, you would see something like this in here where it says Nick Thomas changed it, version 19. You'd have to go back into the commit history, find that version, see what it was, and come back to your comment. And if you're like me, you might forget what that actually said in that process, and then you're trying to bounce multiple windows. So what we're looking to do to improve usability is actually making sure that those changes are visible in line for you. So you can toggle that open and see that direct change. So very minor, but a huge improvement to usability. And then finally for create, I mentioned in the last Kickoff call our prep to begin redoing the menuing in 14.0. This work is continuing to happen. If you want to check that out, you can go through the issue. But high level, we're going to begin collapsing down the top navigation to start and then begin improving the left navigation after that. To switch over to the plan stage, and this is focused on the same thing Kenny highlighted a little bit ago, about focusing on infra support and improving the .com experience. We're continuing the work we talked about in the last kickoff call related to deletion of projects on .com. In 13.11, not only will deletion be there, but the ability to set whether you want that on or off. So you may decide that you want instant delete of your projects, as well as the ability to set that delayed time window. This is going to allow customers to be able to recover their projects they may accidentally delete without needing to engage GitLab support and the GitLab infrastructure team to get those projects back. To switch back to adoption through usability, the plan team is also working on the ability to delay opening of sub epics. This is currently an issue that I have open, but you'd have a list of, say, child epics off of an epic. If you go to rearrange them like you can today, if you end up hovering over an existing epic, that tree will open up today, and that makes you get stuck in that one. You have to go all the way back up and move back around. This will actually delay that expansion as you're dragging down, so that way you can actually get around the epics that have children down to where you want to put that epic in your priority. And then finally, and this ties back into usability as well. Last kickoff call, I went over that we are going to be introducing issue types. So for certified, they're going to be moving requirements to a new issue type of requirement. This is going to allow you then to take those and link them back over to test cases and begin to apply your requirements into the daily workflow for the team. And then to wrap up the dev section with manage, I'm going to focus primarily on, again, usability and driving adoption. The first thing the team is working on is adding in the time that you're spending in that stage of the value stream process, as well as including information as to what causes the event to start and what causes the event to stop and move to the next stage. This is just going to provide that additional visibility to understand where your team is without having to drill in deep, as well as understanding what is causing that metric to be generated. And then finally, today, Devops Adoption is currently a report that only lives at the instance level. This is obviously impacting not only adoption for self-managed customers, but our SaaS customers on .com cannot see that adoption report. So that is going to be moving down with the rest of the analytics items. So right where you see valuation today, you'll also have the Devops Adoption report there as well. So those are just some of the highlights from the dev section. To move over to the sec section, we'll start with secure first. This is first item is a huge move forward on usability and improving your experience with security scanning results. Today, there's not a default behavior for all the scanners that we offer to you, whether that's SaaS, DAST, Latency scanning. They can generate different types of output as part of their end of their run, and we want to make that a unified experience so you have a better sense as to what happened. This is going to include consistent error code messages, error code numbers and messages, so you can better plan out how you want your pipeline behavior to be. So example being, you can actually set it to succeed, but have the jobs fail and then understand why the job failed. So it's a nice big improvement that the composition analysis team is taking on for the entire stage. For SAST and secret detection, we're improving vulnerability tracking within your source code. This is a huge step forward. It's a project we've talked about in the past, but this is going to be bringing a reduction in false positives within your projects. This is also building the baseline to begin to track vulnerabilities across multiple projects within a group, allowing you to eventually dismiss a vulnerability once and dismiss that type for your entire group. So a nice big step forward. DAST, we haven't talked much about our Browser project. It's an open source DAST engine focused on single page apps. Horizon 1, which is our first release of our crawler, is actually going to be coming out on .com here shortly, and then available to self-managed customers with 13.11. I want to kind of highlight our next steps beyond what we're going to offer within that default crawling, and that is improved logging of output from authentication. Anyone who's set up a DAST scan knows this is probably the hardest part of getting DAST to work properly. And a lot of scanners today do not give you the output needed to fully understand why your authentication succeeded or failed. And in 13.11, Browser is going to include the concept of generating an authentication report, so you can see exactly how our crawler interacted with your app, and then see why it failed, and you can then go back in and adjust the configuration accordingly. For fuzz testing, we're just continuing to make iterative improvements. This is introducing rows and columns into your corpus management. Again, focus on adoption through usability. And you can see that this includes now multiple rows and the ability to take action directly on the corpus within the UI. And then finally, to finish up with vulnerability management, the Threat Insights team. First thing they're working on is continuing to expand the bulk status updates we introduced with the last release. This includes being able to add a comment or a dismissal reason within that bulk edit, allowing you to have better visibility into the actions being taken on vulnerabilities. And then finally, this has been a big request from customers over the last several months to have the ability to create security vulnerabilities within GitLab that are not coming from a scanner. And so this is going to allow you to work with, say, your bug bounty programs and bring in the vulnerabilities into the vulnerability dashboard, the security reports, and all the other components that you rely on for tracking your overall risk. First step here is obviously introducing the API, and then in further releases, we'll include the ability to do that via the GUI. And then to wrap up the section with Protect, the container security team is continuing to add upon what we've been releasing for our security orchestration. That went minimal last month, and now we're working on what makes it viable. This includes being able to schedule scans for DAST against in that on-demand function against applications running in production. It's a nice big step forward, allowing you to then enforce policies within the project that cannot be disabled by users. Again, great addition of usability, also ties back into compliance and other components of AST leadership. And then finally, this is another big work across the community. We're looking to move our container scanning category off of Claire and CLAR, the two scanners we use today, and move over to Trivy. Trivy is an open source project by Aqua Security. And together we're going to partner to continue to make Trivy a better open source scanner, including the ability to scan against containers in production, which is something we do not support today. And in partnership with them, we're also going to be making a big step forward for the open source community by bringing the GitLab vulnerability database down to core and available to the open source community. That'll also be a time release, but that's something we can do together with Aqua Security to make Trivy even better and let everyone else protect themselves even more and identify issues faster than before. So that's a lot of updates. Didn't get through everything. Again, please check out all the deprecations for dev and a couple for sec. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Newt.
Thank you, David. Wow. So can't wait for the DORA 4 metric meantime to merge. I'm super excited about the performance and usability improvements. With secondary mimicry and search, I expect OpenShift will be very popular. I look forward to having more users get access to the DevOps report. It's been a long time coming, and love the opinionated, consistent default behavior in line with our product principles for AST scanners and jobs. Browser improvements will be a game changer. Can't wait for that. Project level mandatory DAST policies are in extremely high demand from our enterprise customers. So great to see us do this. 13.11 promises to be an amazing and compelling release. And I didn't even cover many of these things that we are doing. So thank you, everyone.